What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Wise stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013, and I'm joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG. Y'all know him as Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie with 8 D's. Paulie, what's happening?
What up, man?
Ain't nothing, man. Just got done with the, had to make a little graphic, trying to get the Facebook ads thing going. And I think you'll like it, Paulie. I think you'll like it. It's, I'll show it to you after the show. But let's just say we're telling everybody how and where they could book their ticket to Screenshot City.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, man. Hopefully we get there with some NBA action today. But it's a pretty wild slate. I see you in the chat. We got Xavier Hendricks saying, "Sup Nation, y'all ready for this toxic mess?" That's 100% what this slate is. And as we go on, it gets worse and worse, or better and better, depending on how you want to classify it. What are your thoughts overall, Paulie?
Yeah, it's you got value for days, and it's kind of just forcing you into stars and scrubs builds. It's only 5 games, so there's not many ways to get too different. You just got to kind of play what appears to be the best, group certain games together. That's kind of like what we've seen is one game on the slate. Yesterday it was Boston-Toronto, got to overtime, and,
Boston
played out a full 50-something minutes. And so, as opposed to other games that weren't close and whatnot, and you needed pieces from that game. So you bunch up the value, and then I think kind of stacking the studs. Like if you're playing LeBron, I like the idea of running it back with Porter and Jokic and things like that. If that game happens to go, you've got the the key pieces from it. I think that's how you approach the slate.
Yeah, it's interesting because at this time of the year, even in the regular season, without the pandemic stuff, the bubble, teams get weird. You're looking for guys that play for motivation. You're trying to predict minutes based off team motivation, and then you get things that are kind of out of whack. Like last night, Brooklyn at first, and it seemed from the beginning that Brooklyn wasn't really concerned about this bubble period. It seemed like they just wanted to preserve some of their guys because they don't have Kyrie, they don't have Spencer Dinwiddie, they don't have Kevin Durant. But then last night, they decided to rule those guys in. The Clippers, who look like they're not trying to win much, they don't really seem like they're playing for a ton. They decided to play Kawhi Leonard like 36, 37 minutes. So it's like you never really know when they're going to use it as a dress rehearsal, like full dress rehearsal. Or, I don't know, maybe it's a pride thing. Now we don't want to lose to them. But it like at a period where it's so important to predict team motivation in minutes, it almost becomes that much more difficult to do.
Yep.
I'll afford it.
I understood. We have that today. Like Toronto plays Milwaukee. Are they going? They don't need to play for anything, but the rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals. I'm sure both teams would like to have the mental edge going into potentially meeting again and win this game, but you just don't know if they're going to it.
Right, 100%. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this. We're going to start off with our first game, which is one of the value-stricken teams, the Oklahoma City Thunder. They will be playing the Phoenix Suns. We have a 220.5 total. It's down 5 points. And the Suns initially opened up as 3.5-point favorites. They're up to -7.5 with all the injury news other than the news that we have for Oklahoma City. Paulie, I was a little confused to see Chris Paul wasn't included in those mix of players that did get ruled out. Curious on your thoughts. Do you think they're going to play him maximum minutes? If so, we could anticipate the usage being massive. But what do you think?
So, it's hard to vision this game staying close, but it could. Before any of the news really dropped, they played yesterday. This is a back-to-back. I wrote in my article, I have a gut feeling that Chris Paul's going to get ruled out, and everyone else got ruled out except him, which is just, confusing. I guess they want him out there to, lead the team, so to speak, because there's all these young kids with no experience. But I have a hard time really wanting to play him at 8-2. Yeah, he could go for 50, but I think there's so many paths to that not happening, and that 50 might not even truly be enough with the style of build we're gonna end up with mostly today. So I lean towards not really playing them. The guys I do want to play are all the value pieces: Hamidou Diallo, Darius Bazley, Luguentz Dort, and Mike Muscala, and even this kid Kevin Hervey, who's like, a true 4. Bazley's really like a 2 or a 3. Kevin Hervey's a true 4, big guy with size. Could, when he's played like in summer league, he's gone off for 40 burgers and shit. He's the direct min. He's a little bit more like, 5% GPP, where like Diallo, Dort, Bazley, Muscala, I'm going to have all of them over 40% today.
Yep, I mean it's one thing I've noticed, a trend that I've been burned by several times, and obviously there was a slate recently where I did end up doing well, and it was actually that slate where I burnt my DraftKings team because I screwed up lock. It was over the weekend. So on FanDuel, which by the way, we found out that FanDuel, even if you forget to import your teams on FanDuel, they'll let you import teams even during the slate as long as you can't take players from the games that are going. But that's pretty clutch for those of you who do MME. But I did well that slate on FanDuel, and it's because I avoided that first game that I would have been crazy heavy on. It was the Portland Clippers game where, no Kawhi. I would have definitely played Paul George. That was the one game Damian Lillard didn't do well in this bubble. And so to me, I'm a little hesitant to want to fire away too much on this first game, being that we have more value, and we could get more on the way. You mentioned, I know Giannis is probable, but you never really know. There's other players on here that could sit and value that could open up later. So I'm hesitant to lock anyone in on this first game too heavily. But it is hard to ignore the some of these value players, like Mike Muscala, like you said. This is a team that's terrible against bigs, and these aren't really like traditional bigs. But they should still benefit from a team that just doesn't rebound well, from a team that doesn't really defend well. So I'm with you, man. I think it's really the value pieces we want to hone in on. And even so, like, we have Boban to talk about. There's no guarantees with Boban ever, but we've got him to talk about before we lock up too heavy on the Mike Muscalas and all these other guys at the center position. So a lot to discuss, but it's definitely picking off value pieces, getting somewhere between, I want somewhere between like 30%, like I would say 20 to 30% of like the value pieces of all the ones, and like maybe I'll get like 30, maybe I get like 40% of the ones I like most. But picking up's gonna be tough, man.
And there are so many, between Dallas and OKC. It's like, is Hamidou Diallo better value play than Delon Wright? Like, I don't know. It's like which one's gonna end with the better score? You really do have to kind of put them in a blender and just mix it up, right, and hope for the best.
100% agree. What about the Suns side of the ball?
Yeah, so, they're undefeated since coming into the bubble. They like, we had written them off. We didn't even think that they were, in the bubble. And they're actually like, like a game behind Portland, in Memphis, and still alive for that 8 seed or playing game, which, no one expected them to be. And it's, when they have games that they need to win, they lean on Devin Booker, who's, led the bubble in usage, except for, I think, 2 players. I think Harden, and there was one other that was over him. And his price, he should be like $10K, and he's really, he's cheaper. He's 8.7 on DraftKings, and I think he's a couple bucks cheaper on FanDuel. Making him the guy that I want. You can play a little bit of Ayton, a little Rubio, and that's really it. You don't need any of these kind of like fringy value plays in like Malik Bridges and Cam Johnson and those kind of guys. Saric, because we've just got all this mega elite value everywhere else. So it's Booker, a ton of, and under 10% of Saric, Rubio, and DeAndre Ayton.
Yep, no, I definitely agree. And one thing about the Suns is like they're playing to win. You don't really have to question the minutes too much here. There's some guy like Ricky Rubio is the one guy that they never really play 35 minutes anyway, no matter what. But Devin Booker, Ayton, as long as these guys stay out of foul trouble, you should expect to see them get their maximum minutes that they can handle today. The Suns are trying to win. They have to. They're here. They're trying to make the most of it. Give them props. They're trying to make I even saw an update that Kelly Oubre may get to practice. So they're like doing their best to do whatever they can to be prepared to continue to play. So at least they're trying. And then at this point in the season, motivation is a big thing. So I'm with you on that. Let's go to the next game. We got the Dallas Mavericks and the Utah Jazz. This is our other team. For now, we may even have more opening up later. But for now, this is the other team that has a ton of value to talk about. We've got a 221.5 total down from 224. The Jazz opened up -6.5. They're still at -6.5 because we already had this news previously. No Luka, no Dorian Finney-Smith. That's the biggest one. And no Kristaps Porzingis. I was kidding, obviously. Paulie, talk to me about Dallas.
Yep. Same thing as OKC. We got, all these players that weren't really getting minutes, not planned to, underpriced and moving into starting roles. We have their lineup. Field refresh. Not yet. NBA's been doing a terrible job of getting starting lineups out early. I vaguely remember this promise of 30 minutes before tip-off that they've just never, ever lived up to. So, there's not a direct player here. It's a little tough. We got Trey Burke, Seth Curry, Delon Wright, and JJ Barea, all four guards that should get increased minutes, should get usage, but which one's going to do the dirt? Tough to say. I mean, I would say Seth Curry's got the highest ceiling, followed by Trey Burke, followed by Delon Wright, followed by JJ Barea. JJ Barea is probably the highest point per minute player out of the group, and projecting to start in certain spots. If he ever gets 30 minutes, he could go for 50. They just so rarely ever do that. Then you got some bigs, Boban, Min Price. He started 2 games ago, and basically, that's all he did. He never came back in. Maxi Kleber should see an increased role. He's 4,200. Justin Jackson's 31. He's probably going to start and get like 35 minutes today. So they're all kind of in play. And then you got the one, normal price player, Tim Hardaway, who should get 20 shots up today. They're all firmly in play. Just like OKC, I think you just kind of, like you said, 30 to 50% exposure to all of them. And, the guys you like better, a little closer to 50. The guys you like worse, down around 25, 30%. Like, I plan to play more Trey Burke and Seth Curry. I'm a little less on Delon Wright and JJ Barea. I think Tim Hardaway is a nice play, but he's kind of in that mid-tier where you're not going to have a ton of plays from. And then, like, Justin Jackson, Boban, Maxi Kleber, I'll have some of, but I'm, less sure as to which ones I like more. Boban's got a huge ceiling if he does get minutes. So I have some shares of him in case he does. But it's the same as OKC. Play a lot of them in varying combos. I don't have like a specific guy to point to and say that's the one.
No, I completely agree. I think assuming that Trey Burke does get the 29 minutes or so we haven't projected for, he would probably be my favorite just because we know he's a complete player. When I say complete, I don't mean he's a great defender or anything. I just mean that he'll get some assists, he'll take some shots. Offensively, he does a little bit of everything. Barea, I would love. I mean, like you said, Barea is probably him and Boban are the highest point per minute guys. They're just the guys whose minutes are the hardest to project. I mean, we're seeing JJ Barea as the projected starter and still only projected at multiple places for 20 minutes max. So that's definitely a tough one. I think a guy like Delon Wright, assuming he's not in the starting lineup, would probably come in a lot lower owned than the other guys. So you want to have some of him as well. And that's exactly why me and Paulie are saying, man, just grab yourself 30 to 50%. You can pick your favorites, make those guys around 50 or higher, but you want to work in some of these other guys because maybe they start, Barea is the starter, people shift to Barea, but then the guy coming off the bench is the one that does the dirty. Maybe it's DeLon Wright, who knows. Boban is obviously a massive point per dollar just beast if he even gets what he's projected. We haven't projected for like 17 minutes, and he still goes for like 8x on that projection. You think you're gonna need a big guy with Gobert on the other side, but you don't know. That we've seen this situation happen several times. Now they don't have Willie Cauley-Stein, they don't have some of the other bigs they have, so maybe they have to play Boban 15 minutes. But even under that assumption, we can just see, Maxi Kleber play 30, 36, 37 minutes tonight, and Boban only get like 12 or 13. It's possible, but I will have my shares of Boban. Rest assured, I'm going to have pieces of all these value guys, and then it's about picking our key players. It's almost like baseball, bro. Like, you're picking the value pieces as stacks from these teams, and you're trying to find like your favorite one-offs, like the Jimmy Butlers or whoever it is that you're trying to work in there around those pieces. So I'm with you on that. Talk to me about the Utah side with no Donovan Mitchell.
So this is much more clear cut, right? It's like, obviously Jordan Clarkson, and then the rest of the team gets a little boosty boost as well. Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, Joey Ingles, Royce the 5'9", all firmly in play, firm targets to exceed value, and guys you're going to get some shares to, with Clarkson and Joey Ingles being my favorites.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, much more clear. We know without him, we can expect to see more minutes, more usage for Clarkson, more minutes, more usage for Conley. Even Gobert is going to have to get a little bit more involved. And without Porzingis, regardless of Porzingis, Dallas is just not very good again. They don't have any big players. Boban's the only one. They're reluctant to play him minutes. And he's not good at defender. He's just big. Maxi's probably undersized to play center. They don't have Powell. They don't have Cauley Stein. Not that those guys would make much of a difference, but this seems like a really good spot for a guy like Gobert. So I'm with you, man. Grabbing exposure to Conley, Clarkson, Mitchell. Gobert. Those are your main pieces. You want to work in Royce the 5'9", all these other guys. They're gonna be low owned because we have value at their positions. So you'll get them very low owned because people aren't dying to play them. But that's all I got to say about that. Next up, we got the Toronto Raptors and the Milwaukee Bucks. This is another one of those games we were talking about where motivation is in question. 228.5 total, up from 226.5. The Bucks opened up -5.5. They're up to -7. Giannis is currently probable with a mouth deal. I think it's a toothache or some shit. But we're gonna talk about Toronto side first. Anyway, Paulie, anybody from Toronto that stands out to you?
So, not a ton, but like I said, this game, could play down to the wire with motivations firm, or it could be a dud. I think it's like a stack it or leave it kind of game. I really like Siakam. Gasol's underpriced. OG or Norm Powell have big upside at their prices if they do get the run. I'll have like 10% max of any of them. With maybe Siakam, I go up to like 20 just because he's extremely underpriced. But I want to have combos with Bucks. Otherwise, I'm not really looking to have like a one-off from this game in the lineup.
Yeah, again, motivation is kind of like, I found it easier to play some Bucks, and I think that's because with Milwaukee, like, I'm cool one-offing guys. Like Giannis is your primary guy, and then after that, like, if one guy gets ruled out, you know who you're going to after that. So I think Giannis is. We'll talk about Milwaukee in a second. The Toronto side, I agree, it was a little tougher for me to get behind. Lowry's price on FanDuel is pretty interesting at 6.8. There's a really big price discrepancy between DraftKings and FanDuel. He's 8.6 on DraftKings, 6.8 on FanDuel. Same thing with I guess Siakam is fairly priced on both sides. I've been a little disappointed. I talked about that with what we've seen from Siakam. I guess Van Fleet would be the player that I'd be more inclined to play. Just because he's going to get minutes, assuming that they do have motivation enough to keep their guys in. And he's been one of the better performers, and his price is still reasonable. Ibaka did really well yesterday, so maybe we see him play with a little more, effort, or maybe he's all motivated. It's really tough in a situation like this when you know that these bigs are going to have to be dealing with Giannis down low, crashing the boards, and trying to post players up. So that kind of stuff can get tricky. But I'm with you. There wasn't a ton that stood out to me. I think in game stacks, if you want to just go game stack, that's fine. But as far as picking one player, it was a little more difficult, but I guess that guy would be Van Fleet for me on both sites, and then Lowry on FanDuel specifically. Talk to me about Milwaukee, Paulie.
Yeah. Giannis, he's a standalone player. He's underpriced at 10.6, very high probability. He's the highest scoring player on the slate. He'll be mixed in with a lot of my stars and scrubs built. Like pairing him with some Toronto players, especially Siakam. And Brook Lopez has been balling since the restart. 29 is his lowest output followed by 33, 46, 30, and 49. You know, those 49s and 46s are 9x plus, and his low is 6.3x. So at 5.3, just seems underpriced and a shoe-in for 6x. And when he breaks up into those 40s, when he ceilings out on threes and blocks, he can be a slate breaking type player. So you got to get a little bit of him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have all this value in terms of guys you want to pay up for. As of right now, I think he's my favorite. I think he's got the a pretty solid matchup for his own sake. Not that I don't respect Siakam. Giannis is a different type of player, man. This is like Superman. You're talking about a guy that's just athletically just a freak. And you got Marc Gasol. Other than that, you really don't have a lot of size. And Marc Gasol, on an athletic basis, ain't shit compared to the athleticism of Giannis. So I'm with you. Bledsoe is kind of interesting on a pricing standpoint. He's like 5'4", and we have a ton of value at the guard position, so we might see guys go a little higher, a little lower. We have Conley. So Bledsoe, who I would anticipate to get a little bit more minutes this time around, is kind of an interesting play. But just interesting. Nothing that I'm ready to take a serious stand on. With that said, we'll go to the next game. We've got the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. We have a 221 total that is up from 220. The Heat opened up minus 3.5, and they are currently, 2.5. They're up to minus 3.5. Paulie, talk to me about the Indiana side first.
Yeah, so I think we're still waiting on TJ Warren's status, but everyone's kind of expecting him to play. He's got him and Jimmy Butler almost went to blows last time they saw each other. They both got ejected from that game. This is the reunion, so that's kind of interesting. The guys I really have my eye on is Victor Oladipo. It wasn't too long ago he was the de facto leader of this team. His minutes have crept up. His usage was in the 30s last game. He finally took close to 20 shots, and he really hasn't gotten his peripherals going yet, which lends to more upside. And Miami actually turns the ball over quite a bit. We're waiting to see if Dragic plays. If he's out, that's increased opportunity for turnovers. So I really like Vic Oladipo today at this decreased price of 5.8. It wasn't too long ago he was a 10K player before all those injuries and time away. Malcolm Brogdon, he's all right at 6'9". If you want to take a couple darts there, that's fine. But that's really it. I like Vic Oladipo. I'm willing to go up to like 30% on him. And, Brogdon, I'm going to cap at 15. If I get 15, great. If I only get like 2 or 3%, I'm fine with that too.
Yep. No, I'm with you. I think that at the end of the day, as much as I like to be excited for this as a whole game, I'm excited for the Warren Butler deal. But in reality, these are two of the slower-paced teams. These are two teams that have emphasized defense. Miami's defense struggled a little bit more. They're not as big as they were start of the season, but in general, on the Indiana side, I think Depot's price, at some point we expect him, this is a guy before his injury that we were expecting to be like 9-10K every day, and we know he has that type of talent. He's just been a little reluctant to show it since coming back from his injury. Rightfully so. He had a really fucked up injury. So I'm with you on that, man. I'm okay with getting shares of Brogdon, but his price has come up now to where it's not a demand, not anything I need. Warren on FanDuel at 7.5 is still within reach. 8.4 on DraftKings just feels like a stretch. Maybe he's low owned and he breaks the slate again. But I'm not going crazy trying to jam in too many of these guys. What about the Miami side?
So I love Jimmy Butler. Even if there was no Warren narrative, at 7.2, you just want to play him. Now you got him motivated, looking to kick some ass. Like one of my favorite plays on the slate. If Dragic gets ruled out, then Hero, Crowder, Duncan Robinson will all become very viable. If Dragic's in, it's a little crowded. And none of those guys really excite me. I do like Bam Adebayo today at 7.9. Indiana really doesn't have any size outside of Miles Turner. Bam should have a double-double and more on layaway. Kelly Olynyk's been playing phenomenal. He's a guy you can get a little bit of, but his price is kind of caught up to where he's, not as exciting as a play, but he's shown us that 40-point upside. If you want to get a couple shares, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. But Butler's the main guy, whether or not Dragic plays. If Dragic's in, I don't mind grabbing some of him too. Obviously, he's 4-9 on DraftKings, but and I do expect Dragic to play. They both went to practice yesterday, so they both returned to practice. I think that means that they're both gonna play. I still like buckets. If TJ Warren, I'll say it again and again. This is nothing against him personally. I don't give a fuck, but he is a terrible defender, and he has been very since coming into the league. So whoever I think is gonna get matched up with him is always in a good matchup. Regardless, Butler is the leader of this team. Butler, I'm sure Warren, I'm sure listen, either one of these guys is going to go nuts, and I think it'll be Butler, or they're both going to get teed up and thrown out because they start talking shit to each other in the bubble, and you can hear everything, so people might freak out. But Jimmy Butler's the main one. I'm good with getting some exposure to Bam, too. I think he'll be lower owned because of Gobert and then the value centers that we have. But Butler's the main one. Like you said, if we were to get those guys, I mean, even now, you could probably still look at Hero at a small exposure because he'll be low owned because his price is now elevated. You mentioned Kelly Olynyk. He's played really well. But it's mainly Butler for me here. Jimmy Buckets, how do you do? Last game, we've got the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Lakers. We've got a 221 total. We've got the Lakers opened up -4.5. They're up to -5. We know Jamal Murray recently came back for the Nuggets. Paulie, talk to me about Denver.
Yeah, Denver. Oh, man, you have to project TJ Warren for 50 points to get any exposure to him at this price. With Jimmy Butler guarding him, is he really gonna smash again? Very, very unlikely. But Denver, not a ton. You're just gonna keep playing Michael Porter Jr. here. Price still not high enough for what this kid can do. The kid was 1 of 8 from 3 and still went for 50 DraftKings points. I don't think we've seen his real ceiling yet. I think 60 to 70 is in the cards when it all comes together. Matchup against the Lakers, this could be kind of like a statement game for Denver. They just got Jamal Murray back. They're actually relatively healthy with the exception of Barton and Gary Harris, who, I don't know what kind of role those guys are going to have on this team with Porter Jr. firmly creating his role and his spot. I don't think they're going to send him back to the bench. So not sure how those guys are going to fit into their future, but give me some Jokic. He's probably going to be one of the lower-owned studs on the slate. And, we saw him triple-double the other day, and I could just see them getting up, wanting to beat the Lakers and make a statement before the playoffs. So I like kind of pairing these guys, Jokic, LeBron, Jamal Murray, AD, Michael Porter Jr., as lower-owned studs on the slate where I think most people are going to gravitate towards Giannis and Devin Booker. You're probably going to get these guys a little bit lower owned and could be a sneaky slate winner here. So Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., a little bit of Jamal Murray. That's about all I got interest in.
Yep, I don't disagree. It's mainly, for me, I'm good with getting some Jokic exposure because if this game does get competitive, they're going to need him down the stretch. But Michael Porter Jr., how do you not like the guy? I mean, there's some potential foul trouble risk as usual. He's a young player. He's aggressive. But what he's been doing has been freakish. Even when he hasn't shot well, he still manages ways to get there with his athleticism. So he's the guy for me too that I'll have the most of, no doubt. I know the price has gotten up there, but I mean we don't have to do much to his price. He's still projecting well just because he's been playing like an absolute beast. So I have to make a correction here to Michael Porter Jr.'s on FanDuel. But yeah, he's the main one for me. Like I said, I'm okay with getting some exposure. These other dudes, they'll be low owned. But Michael Porter Jr. and Jokic are the main two. Michael Porter Jr. the main one for me. Paulie, go ahead and talk to us about the Lakers while I fix this Michael Porter Jr. shit on FanDuel.
Yep. So, really like LeBron. If this game does become one of those, back and forth, try to get bragging rights or, the momentum going into the playoffs and the only way I see the Lakers kind of hanging in is with LeBron, doing everything. Yeah. AD does not have a good history against Denver. They've got a bunch of guys with size to throw at him. So it's going to have to come from LeBron. He's going to have to do a ton. Going to have to get a triple-double. So he's the guy that I would be looking to use from the Lakers. Of course, AD's, on any day can go for 80 when things go right. So I wouldn't say don't play any of him, but I'm not looking to get a ton of AD. I really like LeBron over him. Quinn Cook, if this was a normal slate, would be a guy to look at, but he's just a nice value play. He's not like an elite one like we've got in Dallas and OKC. So that was more for a normal slate. Same goes with Al Caruso. I guess Dwight Howard, if he gets enough minutes, can 10x his price like he's done, like he did last game, and could exceed like a Boban value play or something like that, where he'd be worth keeping in the player pool, and if all goes right, he could be like that 1% slate breaker that helps you win a tournament, like Austin Rivers yesterday. But that's it. I like LeBron a lot. A little sprinkle of AD and a sprinkle of Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I guess that's the question of the day: is who's today's Austin Rivers? Like, it could be a lot of different people. I don't think it's likely that we see it be a balanced build, but there's always that potential. In the regular season, that's always something that we've done whenever we knew stars and scrubs is going to be crazy chalk. We try to find those mid-tier guys we thought would do the dirty. A little tougher on a smaller slate like this. A little tougher because you're seeing these scores where, like, most nights you're seeing people with at least one or two shitty players in their lineup and still winning. So it has come down to raw points more than anything else most of the time. Obviously, when you have Austin Rivers matching James Harden, that's kind of a big deal. But for the most part, it's kind of been like that. But I'm with you, man. If you think that the Lakers are going to go out there and push and try to win, which hasn't really looked like to me like they've been too concerned about winning, then I would be interested here. And I think DraftKings, the pricing on both sites for Anthony Davis and LeBron kind of reflects the effort that we've seen. It is what it is. So with that said, there's not much from the Lakers I'm all that interested in. I think that anything else is just for ownership. Like, if I'm playing anything from the Lakers, it's just for ownership. Just, hey, you never know. Kawhi Leonard, it looked like he was only going to get like 30 minutes, ended up playing like 36, 37, and they went all out and tried to win. So, you don't know. And that's that. So with that said, let's get into some of these questions here. Let me just pull up this YouTube chat. Fill up some of this YouTube chat. We've got about a little less than 30 minutes to look. How do I pop this bitch out? Hit the pop out chat. There we go. All right.
Ownership projections?
I didn't look at any, but we could definitely pull it up here. Let's see. Shout out to, I think that's Bled. Yeah, shout out to Bled. Once again, someone give Paulie D a cigarette. I just saw. Is that true? I see. Broside Media says Greek is out. I better check. Let's check the Slack chat and see if that's. Is that legit? Seth Curry available to play. Lowry's. Yep, he's out. Giannis is out. So there you go. Shout out to Broside Media. So even more value to add to the list. We'll have to see the status on like Marvin Williams, Muscala, but that's going to make Middleton and Bledsoe much better plays, if you will. So this is the craziness of the NBA at this point in the season. I guess with that said, talk to me about what this means to the slate for you.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Middleton's priced up. He seems to always go for 50 in these kind of games. He'll be very popular. The industry's just, trained to basically load up on these guys. They seem to never bust. Bledsoe, he's 5'4", gonna go for 40 plus. You got to get some of that. Jesus, this blows. That probably makes Brook Lopez even stronger of a play. And some of these value plays are probably viable now. George Hill, maybe Ersan Ilyasova. He doesn't need a ton to get 30 DraftKings points, and he's 3,500. So quite a bit more to add to the pile. Glorious.
Daniel D in the chat says all the Raptors starters likely to not play. So again, it's a possibility. We were just talking about how there could be more value opening up as the slate goes on. I haven't heard anything just yet on the Raptors, but we've been on doing a stream for the last 40 minutes or so. So, if we see anything official, we'll go ahead and throw it in there. But this is kind of, hate to say it, but this is kind of what you expect at the late NBA. When we get to playoffs, it's going to be glorious. But in that in-between period, it's a fucking crapshoot. I mean, it's a wild world we live in.
Wow. I mean, if they do that, then all of a sudden you got Chris Boucher, Rondae Hollis Jefferson, Terrence Davis, all like mint price that, those could be the best value plays on the site.
Oh, yeah. And that's exactly why I'm trying not to. I think my strategy is going to be to try and wait as late as I can to see what late games are going, because they're going to be lower owned. It's been a method. With this NBA restart, there's been so many really good spots in the opening games. And maybe today's the day the opening game does the dirty, and I'm just the asshole who played it every other day and went down with the ship, and now I'm going to miss the boat one, But I do believe that the ownership's going to be concentrated with the early games, because it has been every single time. We're still getting a lot of players. I mean, obviously your James Hardens and all that, that's a little bit of a different situation. But we're getting news kind of late, like Paulie said. So I'm going to try to use this and try to keep teams pivotable, if you will, so I can make some late swap actions later.
Pivotable.
Sit straight pimping. Mario Young says, does it make sense to play Basley and Muscala?
Muscala, I don't know if he's got enough upside for what this slate's going to offer you now. Basley is he could be the best play on the entire slate. In terms of together, it's fine, but I would lean not to. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of take away from each other rebound-wise, shot-wise, and, like, the better one does, the less better probably the other does. Neither of them get assists. And the slate's loaded with value options. It's like you're going to have the best of each situation, not like three on the same team more than likely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't see any other questions, so I guess we'll go ahead and get out of here. Paulie, you and I both have some adjustments we have to make to our own personal teams. I know I do. So we'll get out of here, nation. It's a wild one. We'll be in and out of Slack trying to make updates where we can, but it's a wild NBA ride. Make sure you come back for the MLB show, which will be at 6 p.m. Eastern. As we continue to book our tickets to Screenshot City. MLB's been really, really good to us all. So we're grateful for that, and we're hoping to right the ship with NBA a little bit. Not that NBA has been terrible. This hasn't been a big pop. I think we've both done decent. It's just not, you want that big pop. Min cashing and all this is great, but you're playing tournaments to get first place. Ricky Bobby style. So with that said, Paulie, anything in closing before we get out of here?
No. Do darts, drop sevens, stay close to the news if you're playing any significant money, because the shit could drop on a dime, and just everything changes. That Toronto thing could be really interesting.
Absolutely. Keep your eyes peeled. If you remember WiseTake.com, like I said, we'll be in and out of the Slack. There's the news feed channel. Make sure you're in the NBA injuries channel so you get the news right away. For Paulie D, for myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, please hit that like button on your way out. And as always, good luck.
Yeah.